welcome back to the BestWorst11 podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Lewa. My next guest is the founder and creator of Gazelle Magazine, a luxury lifestyle magazine with a national and global impact and reach. Prior to this venture, she worked as a model, television news producer, and the owner of a public relations agency, just to name a few areas along her professional journey. Born in Zambia, she's an alumni of the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and you can follow her at Gazelle Magazine or at Just Cilla, that's Cillah on Instagram. And you can find her online at gazellemagazine.com and Cilla.com. She has this great podcast that I really encourage you to listen to. I know they're going to try to get that going back up again called Just Cilla, and I really encourage the listeners to check it out. There's some really strong content. Welcome, Cilla.
Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted. This is amazing. I'm so thrilled to be able to chat with you.
Well, I appreciate it. You know, I had a chance to listen to your podcast, and it really lined up a lot with kind of what I was doing, especially the last episode that you were able to produce in January. But then I went back in the banks as we were discussing before we started recording, and just super excited about the work that you're doing. But I'm really kind of curious if we can just start off by telling me a little bit about and the listeners, of course, a little bit about your work with Gazelle and entrepreneurship. Tell me a little bit more about that role.
Okay, so I am the founder and publisher of Gazelle Media. We have Gazelle Magazine and we have STL County News. We recently started doing podcasts because we wanted to connect more with our audience. So everybody gets to see what we write and be able to connect with us in words on paper. But I think it's really critical in this time of digital that we bring our voices to the screen and be able to share our thoughts with our audience. So we have an amazing team. I have a team of executive editors and a lot of contributing writers and photographers. So we cover everything from fashion, beauty. Community is a big part of what we do, particularly event coverage for nonprofits. Everybody loves to see themselves. So those social pages are a great income generator for us.
Excellent. So, you know, I was kind of doing a little bit of research on you, and it sounds like you've had an interesting journey towards this place. And so if you wouldn't mind, just from a career perspective, if you can talk to me a little bit about kind of your evolution to becoming this incredible entrepreneur.
I always knew that I wanted to be in media. So I went to the University of Missouri, St. Louis. I graduated with a mass communication degree. And my first job was as a production assistant at Channel 5. That was about 3 weeks after graduation.
Wow.
So I literally, I had 3 weeks to kind of figure out if all this work was even worth it, you know, that dead period of trying to figure out what the rest of your life will look like. So I got that first job. You could say that I forced myself onto the producers and anchors to let me write for newscasts. So about 2 years after that gopher position, you're running teleprompter, you're pretty much at the bottom of, of the lake as far as where you stand in the organization. You're literally learning from the best. I did gain enough experience to be able to get a job at Channel 11. KPLR 11, that was before they merged with Fox 2. I worked as an assignment editor, so I'm the one hearing the scanners and the news, sending photographers out and all that stuff that ends up on the screen. I just really loved the writing part of it. So I worked myself into a role as a production, an associate news producer. I was there for several years, and then I got rehired at Channel 5 by the same executive producer to serve as the morning news producer. I started on weekends, and basically what a producer does is you walk into a newsroom, you're looking at an empty screen, and you have to fill it with an hour of news. So every decision that you're making, particularly on the shift that I work, you have to determine what the top story is. When the news anchors and reporters come in at 3 a.m., my shift started at 11, they need to know what they're going live on. They need to know what they're doing. So I started in that role as a weekend producer and writing on the weekday newscasts. In time, I ended up going on Today in St. Louis. So I was the morning news producer for the 5 a.m. And occasionally the 6 a.m. and the 10 a.m. newscast. So, yeah. I think I was just really determined to grow in my role. I just love being the best that I can be. And I was literally going for it. So it was, the newscast was highly rated Today in St. Louis with Art and Jennifer Blum. So if you've been in St. Louis long enough, you know them. Yes. And that eventually led to entrepreneurship for me. It's not really a pretty story. The short version is I was going through a divorce. Working that night shift is really hard on relationships.
I can imagine, yes.
Yes, and I'll tell you that very few overnight people in the news business are on their first marriage. It's just hard. So that experience was the catalyst for me to go into entrepreneurship because I wanted to gain a sense of control over my life. It was hard to work nights at that point. I had a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I was so exhausted. I was literally going 100 miles an hour and coming home and being a mother, feeling a sense of, like you're losing control of your life. It wasn't gratifying anymore because I didn't have the life balance to enjoy it. So that is what led me to walk into my news director's office. I asked for a schedule change and it wasn't possible at that time. And I just quit on the spot.
Wow.
Yeah, it was 2008. There was a recession going on. That is, that's how exhausted I was. And my news director said to me, "Are you sure you want to quit your job when everybody around you is losing their job? You are secure." And I just said yes. I just in that moment felt that I was going to take a leap of faith and be happier. So that's what led me into entrepreneurship. I founded my PR agency, Xanadu Public Relations, and I went on to represent the Pujols Foundation, professional athletes and entertainers, and corporations like Mercy. So I did that for several years until around 2013. I found myself, while I was doing PR, just connecting with a lot of people in the fashion and lifestyle sector. It led me to found Missouri Fashion Week at the time. We changed the name to Missouri Style Week. But that became a staple in the St. Louis community for a few years. And that's what led, all these creative people in fashion, beauty, industry, lifestyle, not a platform in St. Louis that appreciated particularly those that came from humble beginnings. I just felt like I needed to give them a voice. That led into Gazelle magazine. And, the short answer is I do things with instinct and when I just feel that it's the right time. And then Gazelle magazine has become this entity of STL County News and the podcast that we're doing, community engagements. Unfortunately, COVID got in the way, but we were about to start doing live podcast events on stage, interacting with our audience. We're really excited about it. So we had to put those plans on hold. But that's been my career journey, a lot of ups and downs in the midst of all of that. But what has been consistent is that it's all tied to media.
Absolutely. First of all, I think it's really amazing. And it must have took a lot of courage for you to walk in 2008, as you mentioned, and as your former boss mentioned, while people were secure, you're getting ready to make this huge decision to walk away and start your own thing. But I noted that you said you took a leap of faith to be happier. And so if you can talk a little bit more about the importance of happiness and career, how did you find a way to merge the two and find this courage to walk away?
I just felt at the time, just feeling like you don't have any control over your life, and also knowing your own potential and understanding very early on that to be able to do the things that I knew I was capable of, I couldn't be in an organization, at that particular time that was just a little slower, So, just to put into perspective, I worked on the back ends of the news business. So you see all the news anchors and people of color on the front end, 2 or 3 of them at any station, even now. And on the back end, in an organization that has 150, people, you are one of maybe 3 other people of color. So the fight was just too hard for me to feel like I was going to be seen in the light that I knew would maximize my potential and my possibilities. Coupled, it was just the perfect storm. Coupled with what was going on at home and just the sense of fatigue, you can't enjoy anything you're creating if you've lost the passion for it.
Yes.
So when I was coming out of college, that was my dream. That's, when I was in college, that's what I really wanted to do. I had to just have an honest conversation with myself and realize that it actually was not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It was the right thing for that time, because everything that I learned in that process became critical with me running a media entity. So there was so much value in the experience of working in organizations that I wouldn't have gotten had I gone straight into entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. It's interesting, the right thing for that time, but not the right thing forever. I think about this moment I remember before a divorce I went through and waking up and realizing that we weren't the right people for each other. She was a wonderful person, talented, and really does a lot to help other people. But as far as a partnership, I remember waking up in the morning and thinking, is this what it's going to be the rest of my life? And that's a very claustrophobic, trapping feeling for both of us. And I can imagine career-wise, there's probably some parallels of I'm doing this thing and do I have to do this forever? And that must have been...
That's absolutely right. Yes. And I can relate as well. You're looking at your partner that you've been with since, I got married very young. I was 19. You barely know each other. You barely know who you are as a person, as an individual. And by the time you get to 25, 27, you have evolved so much as a human being.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and you're looking at your partner going, I just know that we are just not in alignment as far as the fundamental things that can keep this marriage healthy and happy. Yes. I've always been a person who didn't really care how I was perceived. I cared just enough, but not so much that I'm not willing to walk away from things when they're not working. There's a lot of judgment when you live the dream job or the relationship. Just so many people are vested in it. And, just being at a place to walk away when it's not working is just so, it was the change maker in my life. I could do what I wanted.
Yes. That's fantastic. So let me just give you another observation too, just based on some of the stuff that you shared so far. One thing I noted earlier is when you talked about kind of forcing your way to be able to, with the higher ups in your news career, to be able to do production and writing. And then this other piece here that I'm not really being over-concerned, aware, but not necessarily over-concerned about how you're perceived. And I'm certain that this comes from somewhere in your life, because those are 2 powerful traits that I want to steal from you and try to incorporate into my own life. So let's talk about your background a little bit. So tell us, where were you born? Kind of what was your upbringing, and what was your life like as you transitioned to St. Louis?
I was born in Zambia, Africa. It is the home of the mighty Victoria Falls, one of the 8 natural wonders of the world. Yes. It's just so magnificent. So I love pointing that out. I lived in Zambia until about the age of 13, and then my family transferred to India. My father was an executive in Zambia Airways, and he was managing the Southeast Asia region. So we lived in India. I was lucky enough to go to boarding schools in other countries. I went to boarding school in England, and then I went to boarding school in Kenya for my last year. So these were both British schools. And I just learned a lot. You know, a lot of people say I'm very formal now, and I know that that's a big part of why. But around the time I was 17 and a half or so, going towards 18, the company my father was working for, Zambia Airways, basically TWA'd.
Okay.
So it liquidated.
Mm-hmm.
There was no warning. Everybody who was based out of the country had to come back. Our lives basically changed overnight. So we came back to Zambia, and between all the economics of that being taken care of, which didn't end well, you know, eventually with my family, there was just a drastic lifestyle change. I could see that we're heading, you know, I just knew that things were going to be bad. You can just see the start of it. And I always wanted to come to the United States. That was a dream that I had from around 10th grade, to come to college in the United States. So when all this was happening, I convinced my mother every day for 10 months to let me come to the United States. And she did all she could. She actually borrowed the ticket that brought me to the United States. Yeah, so during that 10 months, the Miss Zambia pageant was taking place. So if you think about it, when I was in high school, I was a very subdued person. Who I am today is not who I was back then. I just was in my shell a lot. A friend of mine came to the house and said, basically, they're auditioning for Miss Zambia, and I think you need to be a part of it. Let's go. It's happening right now. And, you know, I didn't even get a chance to think about it, you know, and it was kind of, you have to do it. You have to do it. I know you're going to be great. Let's go. You've got nothing to lose. And so I went, and the short story is I auditioned, and out of a whole group of people, they were choosing 12 to be in the Miss Zambia pageant, with the winner going on to Miss Universe. I was number 13, so I didn't make the cut. About a week later, I got the call that one of the girls had a baby and didn't tell the organizers, and that particular time you couldn't be a mother and be in a pageant, basically. So she had to drop out. And that's how I ended up in that number 12 spot. And I went on to compete and ended up being the first runner-up. So all of this was just serendipity and unplanned. And sometimes when I look back, I can't even believe I did that. It was such a leap of faith. But it also gave me the courage, you know, coupled with the fact that I did go to boarding school, to know that I could survive by myself anywhere in the world. I just had a burst of courage. You know, it was such a self-esteem booster, so to speak. So I came to St. Louis with literally I had $136. Wow. And I knew a friend in Columbia, Missouri, who was attending Mizzou. And that's how my journey started. I came from New York to Columbia, Missouri on the Greyhound. It was about 24 hours.
That's an adventure all unto itself.
It was. But it was so exciting at the age of 19. I wasn't really thinking about fear and all that stuff. I just had a passion to be someone. And I think that overpowered any fear that I had. And, you know, up to this day, it's a driving force, not necessarily to be someone at this particular age, but to feel like I contributed something and left something in the world of value. So a lot of things that I'm starting to do, I just want to leave a legacy of helping and uplifting and empowering, particularly women.
Absolutely. So it's interesting that transition from this more subdued high school student being pushed on stage in this pageant area where all the lights, all the attention are on you. The serendipitous moment where somebody's withholding of information push you from number 12 to number 2 to run first runner up. And the growth that happened through all those interesting experiences, including, again, building this courage from all these, both from the pageant experience, the boarding school experience, and all of that together. I'm also curious about something else. This last part you talked about, you said that initially you had a passion to be someone, which I think I can resonate with. And a lot of people, as we come into this world, we are very focused on ourselves and wanting to be somebody. We have these fantasies of being either famous or successful or whatever else. And somehow for you, that has transitioned into this idea of being a contribution, someone who leaves something of value for others, that legacy piece. I don't know. I've not been able to name in my brain where that transitioned for me to wanting to be a contribution. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, just out of curiosity, are you able to pinpoint some place in your life where that transition from self to others?
I would say it has happened in the last 5 years.
Excellent.
I'm just looking back and seeing the random people along the way who lifted me up. There comes a point when you feel like there's just got to be something bigger in the world. It's not all about making money. It's not all about me, and it's an uncomfortable place to be when you feel like you're just not doing enough for others. Sometimes you can get into this me. I want to have a career. I want to build. I want to do this. I want to do that. It's all about you. Uh-huh. And then you realize you're not getting a lot of joy out of all these things that are happening. And at some point I realized it's because it was all internal. It was all about me. Mm-hmm. And to be able, and it started gradually, when I had people come, particularly young people, and say, I remember when you spoke at such and such and how it inspired me. I did this and I did that. Or we met here. I started seeing people, Yes. And even when I go to events now, I see people, I take the time to see them as human beings and not just these people who are an audience in this thing that I'm creating. I just, and speaking of too, I watch Super Soul Sunday, I watch Brene Brown, I watch Iyanla,
yes. I'm a fan too. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just an innate desire inside to be a better human being. And the best way to be better is to just do something for somebody else. And so as I'm embracing that part and knowing that it's part of my life, and sometimes you're thrown into it. When people keep saying the same thing, I was inspired when you did this or when you say this, you start analyzing and saying, maybe my life purpose doesn't lie where I think it does. Mm-hmm. Maybe it lies in me touching somebody else's life and making their life better, not making my life better. Because the more I do it, the more my life seems to be better, yes. And it's full of challenges, without a doubt. But my perspective on that has changed, and understanding why I'm being given those challenges. It's no longer about how things are unfair. I look at it, what is the lesson in it for me? Am I supposed to be making a transition to doing something else? What is this trying to teach me? So I take a moment and listen to what I'm being told and given. And that has just, that has been a guiding light for me the last 3 years, particularly.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's, to me, very inspirational, and it really is fortifying. I think, as I reflect on career decisions and choices and ambition, when it was inwardly focused about getting to the next step, maybe getting to some end goal career-wise, it left me unsatisfied. And I think, that transition space that I'm going to have to do some reflecting on after this, to be honest with you, about when that happened for me is going to be really important, because I know the what, but I just don't know the how I got there. And I think just listening to you mirrors that importance in my life as well. So I really appreciate that. You began to see people. That sounds so amazing. Like you began to actually be alive. Like that's just amazing. So, because I always think of people who put out together a product, or maybe they're in business and they're thinking about bottom line and just numbers. But you're starting to see the people you serve and the people you work for and the people you're providing content for. And that's an incredible shift. Does that make your work a lot more enjoyable? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. I absolutely love what I do. And I'm vested in my team as human beings, not just, people who are providing an end product. There's just a sense of community that everybody needs. Even if it's 3 or 4 people, you just accomplish so much more because you have a mission. And the mission is clear in our organization. Our mission in Gazelle is to inspire and uplift and give opportunity to those that will not have other doors open for them for whatever reason. So there's always the underlying thing that you get to be known for, because you are all in alignment as a group. So I certainly attract like-minded people. I think that helps, because everybody has different values in whatever they're doing. And so aligning with people who think and see the world in a similar way that you do helps a lot in that process. To have people, there's a certain point that you get in your career where people are scared of telling you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I have always wanted to be surrounded with people who are not afraid to tell me when I'm steering wrong. And that has become even more evident as we are dealing with diversity issues. Diversity and politics are such great dividers. What is my responsibility with having this platform to be able to impact change, but understanding that every single person, regardless of their opinion and view on the world, is still a human being.
Yes.
And how do you tell the stories responsibly in a way that is uplifting? That takes a bit of strategy and intention. What is your intention for doing it? So that's something I think about when we are covering controversial things. If I just remember that everything that I want to do, I wanted to lift somebody up, then I'm very careful in how I say things, because you realize that people are actually listening. So how am I going to communicate? Because people are listening to me, which means whatever I'm saying has the potential to influence what that person does when interacting with somebody else. So I like fostering a world of understanding.
Absolutely.
It's not easy.
No, I can't imagine in your field it would be easy. And, I think about your mission and value around lifting people up and lifting others up, and that being kind of a central tenet, really guiding the principles of how you work, what you cover in your media outlets. Also, you could do the cash grab, like you could do sensationalized media, where you can push narratives that are more controversial, difficult, and not necessarily all of them can be difficult, but more controversial and are more about trying to pull people's emotions and pull people to split one way versus another in their thinking. But it sounds like you're really centering around this idea of that I want to explore a little bit more with you. It's this idea of that I struggle with, because I work with a lot of students who are going to go into the nonprofit sector. Some might do some social entrepreneurship. Some might get MBAs and do some business work and do some social responsibility work. But this idea of balancing profit versus mission, right? And so you have you're a business, you're an entrepreneur person. So I think there's this idea about business is and entrepreneurship is the most important thing is the bottom line, making money, right? Being profitable. And you're seeming to try to strike this balance between being also people-centered, whether it's with your staffing and your team, or whether it's the content that you put out there in all your platforms. And so I'm kind of curious about you, if you've come up with some sort of a philosophy for balancing, having to meet that bottom line, having to make money and be profitable, but taking care of that mission, that mission-centeredness.
And, being profitable, particularly in my business, can be a huge challenge. I mean, the world is changing so much. And, when we do talk about challenges, I'll share a little more about that.
Yes. But
I'll tell you that there are different things that drive people in life. And for me, money is not the driving force. I want to do what I love. I want to do it passionately, and everything works itself out. Now, of course, it doesn't just work itself out, but I find that, everybody has a role to play in life. And for me, profit has just never been that. I'm comfortable, and I have a business, and I've got a home, and I love the creativity part of it. And we are innovators. We do amazing things. We think outside the box. We do all of that stuff. I had to learn the business side because the creativity is given. I believe that it's God given. I have to work hard. I have to put in the 10,000 hours, but it's innate. It's there.
Yes.
Right. And this is one of the things I tell young people who are coming out of college. Really think about the business side as well, even if you're in the liberal arts, because it took me a while to care about the business side because I just wanted to create. I wanted to do the fun stuff, the stuff that's fun to me. And now, by sheer economics, understanding that in order for me to do what I love, I have to be able to run a business.
Yes.
That is not something I realized until my mid-30s. And usually there's some event that, they come to Jesus moment that's like, oh my God, I have to change something here, But now I work in a place, being able to say it's not about what I want to create. I have all these people working really hard for me and my vision and my company, and they deserve to be taken care of. So again, I'm not thinking about my bottom line. I'm thinking I might be okay with this, but I have these people that there's a certain responsibility as the head of the company, which I've heard other people, no matter what the size of your company is, it's a certain pressure. You feel responsibility for your team. You feel responsibility for their children. You feel for their families, their mortgages, et cetera, et cetera. So you end up caring about money because you have things to take care of. But again, when the mission is clear in your organization, it's just easier to deal with the things that come. It doesn't mean that you're not going to go online and find me being controversial, particularly in this time when you can't just sit back and let other people take care of things. I had a period of fear where I say, well, this doesn't align with our readership. Do we really want to talk about that? It could hurt us as a brand. And now the way the world is today, as it stands, I've had to figure out as a leader how we are going to tackle these issues. Because my team is made up of, Democrats, Republicans, different religions, et cetera, et cetera. You can still be different in an organization and still have the same core mission to take care of, to just have responsibility, to care about what you're putting out and its impact beyond your product. I think that is so ingrained in our organization that even when we feel ourselves steering too far with anything, we bring ourselves back. That's not to say that you don't tackle the issues. You just do it in a way where the whole team feels like they are a part of the change. You're not excluding in that conversation. And there's a level of honesty you have to have, and being able to say as a leader, I need your feedback about this. This is what we're trying to do. I need your feedback. How do you feel? And so you start feeling the different perspective from somebody who might be white or Republican or Democrat, and they're sharing their perspective. And cumulatively, that's a poll that you just took. And that helps you frame the message in a way that empowers.
That's wonderful. I think we're very tempted to be tribal and pick teams. And that's what really gets in the way of a lot of what we're trying to do here. And I think a lot of people are getting disappointed and having some unmet expectations happen when, we're so entrenched in one way of thinking, and being able to open and bring different voices to the table, again, focused in on the mission, the clear guiding principles of your mission is super important. I also love the idea of that you continue to do what you love and that what you're passionate about, which is really important, of that intention setting around that mission and pulling yourself, or at least aiming in that direction. That's been made very clear for your team. So just one more thing, and then we'll get into the best worst thing, the big question here in a moment. But I want to know about this idea you said earlier. Along the way, and maybe this is dipping into the final question, but along the way, random people kind of helped you out And I'm curious about your take on this collective base of support and help from other people.
You know, there's something that I say so much lately. Your biggest supporters will not look like what you think they will. You don't know how many advocates you have around you if you just open up yourself to receive, and so, from people investing in my business or giving me the biggest advertising contract or major sponsorship, none of it came from the base that I thought it would. So just having that openness, sometimes you're so clear, even as an organization, we're going for these people because they align with our mission. We're going, I've learned over time that what drives people is something different, and I noticed that the people that are investing in Gazelle on so many different levels, they're investing in the mission and the belief that that group of people can create what they say they will. Many times they're not investing to make a profit.
Yes.
You have the responsibility to show them that what they're investing in is profitable. But that initial investment or that initial conversation that leads you to a bigger stage, sometimes it comes from someone who was at an event that you were at, and you didn't even notice that they saw what you were doing. And even me just being on your podcast, I haven't talked to Ryan in several years, but how profound that he remembered what I'm doing and the impact it's having. So just being open to those people and opportunities is one of the reasons I started seeing people for who they are. That person looks really white, conservative, and probably has no interest in whatever I'm doing. And that person approaches me and has a human conversation with me and says, you know what, I have this major thing going on and I would like to invest $20,000, et cetera, et cetera. And you're just like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. So judging people by the way they look, if I had done that in my life, I wouldn't have been where I am today. And those moments happen. I'm on the board of the YWCA. Mm-hmm. Well, that happened because I spoke at an event and Adrienne Bracy, the executive director, was there and she liked the message and it was in alignment with the YWCA. So I ended up on the board. Just all these clusters of experiences. I started doing podcasts and now speaking on a bigger platform because I got invited by STL TV to a networking event. And that led into me creating a video for social media just very casually. Well, that led into a speaking engagement and on these bigger platforms. So just being open to receive, not being afraid to veer from your original plan. I think we tend to have razor vision in how we want things to go, that the destination and the direction we are supposed to take, you don't see it. Something's not working. This particular business is not working, but I have to make it work. I don't like failing. I have to make it work. Well, maybe you're being pushed somewhere else. You're so stuck on that, you're missing the opportunity. You're missing the message. And that's that really helped me in my career changes to be able to say, okay, this was here because I needed to be here. And now I'm going to take this opportunity. It doesn't matter that it doesn't look the way I thought I did. My journey is not supposed to be a straight line. So I have to allow things to come in and change me and impact my direction. Just being open to receiving.
Well, there's no doubt that openness clearly has helped you find not the straight line, but the right line or the right turns and curves and things to bump up against and to grow from. And that's amazing. So we're going to take a little short break and then we'll get to the big question.
All right.
No sleep, only for the weary. Don't speak, let your dreams escape. Nothing that I can say or do can take away my pain for you. Taming the beast is not so easy now.
All Scylla, again, thank you for being here. And as you know, this is the Best Worst Thing podcast. And folks who've listened to several episodes know this is the time where we ask our guests to share a challenge or a trial, personally or professionally, that they had to overcome. So it's the what happened. It's the kind of story, how you worked through it. And what are some takeaway lessons that you'd love to pass on to listeners? So Scylla Hall, what is your best worst thing?
My best thing, obviously, was quitting my job. Being able to leave behind that regular check that I expected every 2 weeks, the stability of it. In the fear of it and just finding the courage to take a chance and to go for it with the outcome, not anticipating, not knowing what's going to happen, I was able to build my entrepreneurship business. So quitting that security, being able to take a risk, even at the worst possible moment, has become the greatest gift in my life. Because I can honestly tell you that I am a happy person. I love my career. I love what I do. It was hard and complicated, but it was the best choice for me. I recognize that I'm not one to be able to work for people. I like to direct my own future. So that was definitely the best decision. The worst decision, I would say, would be, just running Gazelle. We started with Gazelle magazine, and it took me longer than I thought it should have taken to be able to understand the impact that digital is going to have on the media business. There was a moment in time when I didn't think I'd make it, because I was so set on, talking about being set on your original plan. I had no flexibility to change the plan. My plan was to have a print publication, which the distribution is from Brentwood all the way to Chesterfield and then to Kirkwood, Wildwood, that whole area. That plan was going well. The problem is the world was changing. And I didn't allow myself to accept that the world was changing fast enough in a way that wouldn't impact the bottom line for me. I think we pivoted just in time, and this period of COVID couldn't have been more, the blatantness of how critical it was to move digitally. It's now. Everybody's digital right now. Everybody's virtual. It's an important part. This event has forced everybody to understand the power of digital. So had I made that transition 2 years ago, as opposed to a year ago, we would have certainly gotten bigger rewards. But at the same time, going through that tension, the tension of trying to stick with the same thing, keep it going, and then realizing if we don't change, we're going to drown. It will be the end. The world is changing. We have to change. We pivoted in time so that when COVID happened, it was a seamless transition.
Yes.
So our whole team can function on a digital virtual platform. And not many businesses can say that. Not many media businesses can say that. So I appreciate the foresight to have done it, but I certainly wish I had done it earlier. And if there's something I would tell anybody right now is you cannot be one-dimensional with your business. Things happen unexpectedly.
You had talked about this idea of being open and this openness. And it sounds like early on, especially in your media ventures, the idea of going fully digital, maybe it took you a little bit more time to be nimble and to think about going in that direction, but you did it, right? At some point you came around, and what made you come around to the digital approach?
It wasn't something I could stop. Whether I liked it or not, it was happening. And the world as we see it, you can see it with Amazon, you could see it with retail giants just folding because online shopping was happening. Just things were moving. The world is changing. Facebook, Google, Amazon, these organizations have changed the way we interact. And I can't change that. That's a fact. I just have to figure out how to fit into this new world. And so, you know, my team consists of journalists who they've been reporters and, you know, news anchors for 25, 30 years. They're used to how things have been. To get everybody on board was a bit of a challenge.
Oh, yeah.
But again, it's the trust factor. And also them being able to see, if we don't make this transition, we are not going to exist. We have a choice, change or die. Those are the only two things that can happen. So we have to change.
Absolutely.
And then you have to convince the community that digital it's critical. And then COVID happened. The blessing in a lot of things ended, you know, we don't have to sell it as hard anymore, you know, because that's just the future.
You are absolutely right. We are living in a time where that digital thing that you started to pay attention to and that you made the shift to, that we're forced to now reckon with that and pay attention to it. And now it is the thing that we're using. My regular job, I do everything digitally, and I don't have face-to-face meetings. For as long as this is going to last, this is going to be the primary mode for which we connect with our loved ones, the way we get our content, the way we shop for a lot of people. That's going to be really important for health reasons and other reasons. And so I think that's really important. And that tension that pulls you from where you were to where you're going to be is a critical piece, right? If you feel like there's something that's not quite settled anymore, while you settled in and you're doing fine, something is stretching you a little bit more. And does that line up with what you were thinking as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You just know, it's just a feeling. And the other thing too is you're looking at major entities in your field, like Condé Nast, Hearst, that are either folding or changing the way they are doing business. You're in the same business. What makes you think you're immune?
Yeah. Yes.
So the trends are happening. You just have to decide when you're going to jump on or stay at the station.
Yes.
And watch live and other things happen because you couldn't adapt. Like you had to adapt. So we were forced to adapt. Did we want to do it? No, it was really comfortable. We had a system. It worked really well and people loved the product. It was great. We didn't want to change anything. But the train was leaving the station and we could see ourselves being left behind if we didn't transition. I think the lucky part for it, for us, was in the local market, the change was slow as well. And you have a global vision. And, you know, if you're from LA or New York or Miami or even Chicago, you can tell that St. Louis is 2 years behind when it comes to anything. So when you're dealing with those markets, or, you know, we deal with a lot of PR people in those markets that are sending us stuff, the feel is just a little different. You feel like you're really behind. But to convince your community, the people around you, that you're behind, it's a beast.
They don't see it.
Oh, no, they don't. And so then you're sitting back. You know, I just did a Facebook Live and I say, I have been telling you about this for the last year and a half. You know, when you're changing strategy as an organization and people are not used to it, they start feeling, okay, what's going on here? Is there more to what's happening? No, the world is changing. I am literally telling you that the world is changing and we can change it together, or 2 years from now, you know, everybody will just be in dire straits.
Yes.
Because you are not prepared, you know, but change is hard.
Yeah, but you know, and I appreciate, again, you taking the risk and being willing to share kind of both the best and worst part of it. One of the things I think that really stands out to me is this idea of change or die, and it's a truth. I mean, you know, I had a student once come to me at a leadership institute. I work with this group called Leadership, and he said, you know, working hard is really important, but when can you rest? Like, when do you just is it going to be like that the rest of your life? And I was like, yeah, it's like it's like going to the gym and you expect that you're going to do the same thing over and over again and continue to get good results. Your body gets used to it, things shift, and you have to make adjustments. You have to, maybe start doing a little more cardio, maybe more weights, or even just the idea of like taking time off. Like, oh, I just go to the gym for 3 months and then I'm not going to work out. I'm supposed to be good for summer. And it's like, that's not, your body will tell you something totally different. That's not how it works. But this other idea and this principle of leadership too, that I keep hearing time and time again, and I think you're really illustrating this really well, Scylla, is this idea of you're a leader, right? You're an entrepreneur and you're a leader, and you're telling your people, hey, we need to change. And that makes people uncomfortable, right? And so you have to make some tough choices. Like, well, we all have to change. I'm seeing this thing coming. It still aligns with our mission. I need you to come with me, or I need people who are willing to go in that direction, because we have to change in order to survive. I think that's really, really a really important insight.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I realized as we were going through our changes that the resistance was mostly because people didn't know where they would fit in this new vision.
Yes. Fear.
They are very clear about what they do. They know how to do it. And, if I'm talking to somebody who's a print reporter and I start talking digital, this person has been doing print reporting for years, there's a sense that they'll be left behind. And so being able to reassure the team that this is a joint effort and clear about where everybody falls and what they can do to be a part of this change and help, I think is what eventually made everybody jump on board in my organization. Just uncertainty is scary, particularly for veterans. New graduates or, our junior writers, they'll go with whatever you're saying. They're on Facebook, their Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. They get the pace.
Yes.
But the seasoned journalist is quite resistant because there's also that nostalgia of that's not how things are done in journalism. The whole, and, even just an institution in education or government, things move just a little bit slower and it's comfortable. So any change feels really drastic and scary, but I think when it's well explained, but particularly when everybody knows that their job is secure, this is not about losing anyone. We all have to do this together, and having a clear structure of how it's going to be done and who's going to do it, just giving them a roadmap so that everybody feels more comfortable. Nobody wants to get in a car and not know where they're going. I think once I realized that telling them and then creating a blueprint of how we are going to do it, even if it's just the next 6 months, this is what our life will look like for the next 6 months. It's comforting for a team.
Well, that's great that you consider multiple audiences. I think there's this nostalgia piece that we're seeing kind of at a broader level about like holding on to like safety and security of the way things used to be, and even just kind of campaigning around going back to the way things used to be. But this idea that change is inevitable and folks, change is coming, and so we have to make adjustments. But what I think is even more insightful is that you are considering all audiences and figuring out a way to communicate to those audiences, especially those who are working with you in your mission, in a way that brings them along, that says, okay, listen, you're still going to be part of this. This change doesn't mean you get left behind. It just means a little bit more growth and challenge for you, but you're part of this change too. And I think that that's something that leaders in any industry, whether it's governments, business, politics, they really need to consider this idea of bringing people along, because again, change is coming, and change is important for growth and survival. And so I love that. I think this is a message that a lot of people need to hear. I really think, I just love the idea of kind of happiness, courage, the idea of challenging the discomfort of change. But I want to just ask one more question for you, which is, well, just two more, but one is, if you had a piece of advice to share with somebody who's gone through similar transitions or challenges to get through and to stay resilient, what would that advice be?
I would say trust the process. I can look back at a lot of major events that have happened in my life, from just my father being, losing his job and it changing our whole life, to just me getting a job in a business that I thought I wanted to be in a newsroom, to starting a PR agency. All of this stuff was incredibly hard, but you just have to trust the process. I can't tell you that there's a part of what I've done, triumphs and failures, because failing is a big part of succeeding. The difference between succeeding and failing, in my opinion, is not giving up. Everybody has challenges. Not giving up and adjusting. Trust the process, learn from the lessons. And in the end, I believe everything works out the way it's supposed to. If you're giving it all, you're doing everything that you're supposed to, and even more, and for whatever reason you are facing resistance, it might be just time for you to change something, including your career.
That's great. Listeners, trust the process, learn from the lessons. This idea that failure is an opportunity for you to make some adjustments and to just not give up. And I think that that's a very powerful and inspiring message from you, Scylla. So I appreciate you coming on. If you can tell us what's the best way for people to get a hold of you, where can they follow you?
The best way to get a hold of me is to visit my website, Scylla.com, CILLAH.com. It leads you to Gazelle Magazine. It leads you to STLCountyNews.com. I'm really excited to be doing speaking engagements on bigger national platforms. So please come to Scylla.com and join the journey of being a gazelle in our midst.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for listening, folks. And thank you, Scylla, for joining us on The Best Worst Thing.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Best Worst Thing podcast. I'm your host, Josh Walewa. Music is produced by DJ Josh One. You can follow him at Boom Note on Instagram and Twitter, and Josh One on Spotify. The Best Worst Thing podcast is edited by Cool Jets Audio and Visual. You can find them at Cool Jets AV on Instagram. Our marketing is designed by Francesca Daniels. You can find her at FrankandKitty24 on Instagram. And our overall design is by Inspired Design with Ryan Daniels. You can find them at getinspired.design on Instagram. Please download us from iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite platform. And remember to share us with your friends, especially those people you think really need us in their life. Don't forget to give us a 5-star review. Thank you for listening to The Best Worst Thing.
The cool Cali kid from the boondocks. Bounce through your hood like chocolate with a crime on. Independent think to play a beat, I get my rhyme on. So when I strut on a path to perfection, city to your borough, to your town, to your streets. Keep your party live, Josh One. Got beats out of nature, Grazer, Oakland, strays to Asia. Hits like Frazier, force of Fantasia. Move through